Hi everybody, my name is Rowana. I am a nursing student at the University of Sydney here in Australia, and today I wanted to do a video sharing with you how I take my notes for nursing school. If you're new to my channel, I am studying a Master of Nursing and it is a 2-year program and it's an accelerated program, so I have a lot going on at the moment, but I'm absolutely loving it. I'm really enjoying it, and if you want to hear more about my nursing journey, I might leave some links down below so that you can have a look at some of the other videos that I have shared as well. First up, I wanted to share with you a bit of an overview of my note taking so that you get an idea of the process that I kind of go through. Also, just to let you know, I have not made a plan for this video, so if I'm jumping all over the place, then please excuse me. Just keep following along and I'm sure I'll get to the point sooner or later. So, an overview. I take notes in lectures, but I don't take my proper thorough notes in my lectures. I actually go home and write up lecture notes as well. So when I'm in a lecture, my goal for the lecture is to actually sit down, listen to what's being said, try and engage with the subject. And also I try to, if I have any questions, I'll try and ask questions during the lecture as well. And I find that's probably the most efficient way for me to learn, rather than trying to write down every single thing that I can and making really pretty notes and making them look amazing while I'm listening and trying to kind of like do the lecture. I think it's just too much to do at once. So what I like to do is listen as much as possible. If there's something that they say that's not on the lecture slide that I really want to take note of, I will write it down, but most of the time I'm not doing much writing at all. After the lecture is finished, I will go home and write up my notes based on the lecture slides and also some of the notes that I've written down during the lecture. I tend to type this up and I use a Google Doc to keep track of everything. Once I've typed it up, I actually like to print it off so I have the physical notes in front of me, and I will add my own notes on top of those notes when I'm studying. So each time I go back to study that topic and there's something that I come across that I don't understand, I will look it up, kind of try and get a better understanding of it in like the textbook or online or something. And if there's like a better way of me putting it into my own words, I might write it down next to it, and I just kind of add notes here and there onto my actual notes that I've written up as well. I really like this process because I feel like it keeps me accountable in terms of getting things done and also like getting a better understanding of the topics that I'm going through. I like being able to write my notes when I get home after the lecture because it helps me to kind of do a recap on the subject, and I'm able to put together a like snapshot view of what the topic is with my own headings and titles and everything like that. And yeah, I think it gives me a better overview kind of typing it up later on. That's kind of a bit of an overview of what I do for my notes, and I'll go into some more details about what I do when I'm in the lecture and how I take my notes at home, and yeah, I'll go through that all now. So if you're interested, you can keep watching. All right, first things first, I am going to share with you how I do my notes when I'm in a lecture. You might already be aware that I'm using an iPad Pro when I'm taking my notes in my lectures. I don't print off my lecture slides beforehand because it's not something that I do my physical study from later on. So yeah, I really love having my iPad. I find it really helpful because it's so lightweight and I can just pop it in my bag, carry it around with me everywhere, and just bring it out whenever I need it. And yeah, I've got the Apple Pencil as well, so I find it really useful to be handwriting things down without having to carry like a binder or a folder around as well. Okay, so I'm gonna bring my screen up here now. So this is my iPad. The program that I'm using to write my notes is called GoodNotes. I'm sure you probably have heard of it because so many people on YouTube and Instagram are using GoodNotes to write their notes at uni and school and things like that. So yeah, that's the program I'm using. I can't remember why I chose GoodNotes over Notability. I think there was a reason, but I can't remember what it is. So if I remember it, I'll put something about it in the description below. But this is GoodNotes here. Opening. So I have a Master of Nursing folder, which is where I keep everything, and then I also have things broken down into my semesters. So it's currently 2019 semester 2, so I go in here. Then I have all of my courses that I'm doing, and each of the courses then broken down into weeks as well. So that's how I plan it all. Some of the other ones don't have as much. I haven't filled out all of the weeks yet, so please excuse that. So I'll just go into this one and I'll show you kind of how I lay it out. I will put all of the lecture slides and a copy of all the PDFs of the lecture slides into these folders, and this is where I start writing my notes. I'll go into, this one was an orthopedic lecture. I'm at the end of the orthopedic lecture, and these are all the slides. So I will quickly show you, for example, this one. As you can see, I've written a whole bunch of notes on top of this slide, and I will do that for a lot of slides. And I'll also do some highlighting and have different colors and things. So for example, in this slide here, had this image here, but there's not a lot of information about what the image is trying to tell us. And our lecturer during the lecture was kind of sharing a lot of insight into what was important about this slide, and I wanted to add my own notes to it, which is why there's a whole bunch of notes written on here. So yeah, this is probably a slide that I would write the most stuff on. A lot of the times I'm actually not doing much at all. I'm just kind of listening and taking everything in. For example, on this slide, there was not much else to write. I just kind of wrote a little bit about osteoblasts because that's something that the lecturer had mentioned and I kind of wanted to put it down. In terms of the colors that I'm using, so the color pink is to denote a heading or a title or subtitle or something like that, and that helps me go through and structure how I want to actually write up my notes later on. So that's what the color pink is for. Yellow are things that I definitely want to include in my notes and things that I find are super important, or at least important for like an exam perspective. And quite often the lecturers will say during the lecture that something like that is important for the exam, so I'll try and highlight it in yellow, and yeah, then I know that I need to focus on that as well. And then the orange color is things that I find useful but may not be as important to include in my notes, but might be able to be kind of like included in some way or written as like a handwritten note later on, something like that. So yeah, that's kind of what the colors mean when I'm in my lecture. Yeah, that's kind of how I do it. It's nothing too exciting. I try not to think about it too much because the more I'm doing in the lecture, I feel like the less that I'm actually listening and engaging with the content. So yeah, I try not to do as much in the lecture because yeah, I don't find it very useful at all. All right, I'm gonna bring up my iPad again just so that you can see how I do my notes when I'm typing them up. And keep in mind that usually when I'm typing up my notes, I am at home on my laptop, and so it's a lot bigger screen. But I thought I'd just show you because I've got my iPad here, and I use Google Docs when I'm typing up my notes, and I'll show you on my iPad. So I'm gonna bring up my iPad here. All right, so obviously in Google. So in Google, I've got my Google Docs. This is the Google Docs that I have here. This is actually not in the format that it would be printed in, so I'm going to just change it to print layout. This is the format that I type the notes in. There's a lot in here at the moment. So this is from my orthopedic lecture. So I just write down what the lecture numbers are and what the topic is, and that's kind of where I start. You will also notice that I have the double columns and the two columns because I find that a lot easier to fit more information in on a page, and I also find it easier to kind of condense some of the content into like smaller chunks. So that's how I've done that. So I always put what the lecture objectives are at the top because I want to be able to remember or quickly glance at what I actually need to learn for this particular lecture and what's most important when I'm going through the notes as well. And I use Google Docs because I find that it is the easiest way to sync everything across all of my devices. It means that I don't have to carry around like a USB or anything like that. I can access it through my iPad, from my phone, and then when I go into uni and I decide to go into the library and use one of their computers, I'm able to see all of my Google documents like straight away, and it's all synced across everything. So yeah, I find that really, really helpful. So I'm an avid user of Google Docs and Google Drive. I also pop in little images so that I find images are really helpful, especially for example, like this one, the RICE, which is rest, ice, compression, and elevation. You've probably already heard of that before, but that's like for acute injuries and inflammation and things like that. I find having it in like a pictorial form is really helpful for me because I am very good at remembering things by where they are on the page, and images are really helpful for that. So that's why I have quite a few images in here as well. So yeah, that's kind of it. So after I've written everything up in Google Docs, I will then print it off and have a folder that I put everything in and sort it all through there. So This is the folder that I use. I think it's really cute. I got this one from Officeworks and it was a little bit more expensive than some of the other ones. I think it may have actually been about $10 for this folder, but I absolutely love it. It's kind of got like a woven, what do you call this, rattan, a natural woven material on the front, which I think is really cute. And it's also something that I can reuse over and over again for my notes. Once I've finished the subjects that I've done, I will file them away and then reuse this one for the ones that I'm currently working on. Alright, it's future Roanna here, just doing a voiceover. I'm really sorry, but my voice is terrible at the moment. I've been sick the past couple of days and I was meaning to record this section of the video earlier than that, but I just have not been very well, so I'm so sorry. But I'm just going through kind of what's in my folder at the moment. As you can see, on the first page is a page all about my assessments, and I like to keep this right at the front so that I know exactly what's coming up and I make sure that I am ticking things off and getting things in on time. And I just put all the information in, like what course it is and how many words things are and that sort of stuff. Down the side, I keep everything by tabs. So all of my courses have dividers and tabs, and then each week has its own tab as well. And that's how I make sure that everything stays together. On the first page of each of the courses, I put in the study outline, and that just gives me an overview of what I have coming up for the semester each week and what kind of subjects we're doing. And here you can like see all the different tabs and things, which is really useful. This is again just like a study schedule for one of my courses. All right, moving into some of my notes. So this is where I start getting creative with the colors. So as you can see, pink, which I've spoken about before, was for the headings and titles, and it just helps me to kind of consolidate each section of the information, and I can easily look at it at a glance. I do have yellow as well for important pieces of information that really stand out. Orange is kind of like things that are helpful to get a background information on some of the yellow components. And then some of the other colors are like green, which I think is like all of the different formulas or quotes and things like that. And I also use purple as well, which is really helpful to stand out if something's like not being understood, and I can prompt myself to look it up later on. I will also add notes here and there when I'm reviewing all of my study notes, because quite often I will think of things that I think are quite important to add, so I will pop those in. And this here is actually a printout from one of my tutorials that I did. When I'm in the tutorial, I like to take notes, and as you can see, we had a few questions that we were answering. So these are my notes that I've put in underneath some of the questions that we were answering in the tutorial. And yeah, I like to look back at them and just know that I've got everything under control. So that's how I take my notes, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And it may not be the best way to take notes for some people, and I think that's completely reasonable. Everyone does things differently, and I think everyone should be able to go and investigate and look into the best ways for note taking for themselves. So if this is something you want to try, then totally give it a go, and if you enjoy it, then let me know if it's useful for you. Yeah, I think sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming trying to write up notes after the lecture and try and get them all done before the next week and things like that. So if that's not for you and you want something a bit more simplified, then yeah, maybe look into some other ways. But yeah, at the moment it's working for me. It's not how I did it in my first semester. I didn't actually take notes at all in the first semester, and I think I put that in a video a while back as well. But I found it a little bit more difficult to find parts of lectures that I was looking for when I was doing my study beforehand. So yeah, I found it a little bit difficult to like sift through things while I was studying. So that's why I wanted to put together some notes that I can do proper study from, and I can look back on quite regularly and have something like physically in my hands that I can look at, because I think that's something that I really value when I'm doing work and studying. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I take my notes. If you have any questions about anything, or if you do something different with your note taking, if you have any suggestions for me, I would totally love to hear about it, because it's something that I am really interested in terms of being an effective note taker, or being effective at uni in general. So yeah, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, then leave me a comment down below. I try and respond to as many people as possible, because I like being able to have conversations with people about these things. So yeah, ask me anything. If you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of me and my channel, then please click the subscribe button down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.